Hi everyone, and welcome to a holiday episode of the Stitch Sessions. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. This week we are working on the Trinity stocking, and in the Victorian Christmas theme, which I am running with this year, I decided to create this traditional stocking for 2021, and I call it the Trinity stocking because we are using the Trinity stitch, and I loved working with this stitch in the round. It created such a beautiful texture, and I'm so excited for you guys to dive into this project. Now, all you really need to know is the single crochet stitch, and you are off and running. So I hope that this gives you plenty of time to add another crochet stocking to your Christmas decor, whether it's on your mantle or anywhere you'd like to hang stockings around the home. So without further ado, let's get all our materials together and let's stitch up our Trinity stocking. Okay, so let's talk about our materials. The yarn that I'm using is Caron's Simply Soft. Now I don't have the label for it because this yarn was actually gifted to me, but I'll put a little graphic up there on the screen just so you can identify it. This is a really beautiful yarn. It's soft to the touch like the name suggests, and I just love it. Now for this project, what I'm gonna do, and I've already been experimenting with it, is I'm gonna work with 2 strands together. So this is considered a medium 4-weight yarn. If you wanted to go up to a bulky 5, you could, but I really like the effect that using the medium 4 double-stranded has. So it's totally up to you. These do come in 170 gram skeins, I believe, and you will have enough to do that with 1 skein. So to do 2 strands together, I just take some from the center pull and then some from the outside. If you feel more comfortable having 2 skeins, then do what's more comfortable for you. So that is the yarn. Just want to make sure it's not tangled there. And the hook size that I'm going to be using for this project is a 6.5 millimeter hook. And it's also known as a size K or a 10.5, okay? And this is gonna give me a nice, somewhat loose look, a loose stitch, but your stitches will be nice and snugly together. Also make sure that you have a darning needle for sewing in your ends and a pair of scissors as always. And make sure you have a nice size darning needle, especially when you're working with bulkier yarn, okay? Also, you may want to have some ribbons, maybe a little bit of extra lace ribbon, things like that, for a little bit of additional embellishment for that Victorian look. So I just have some leftover ribbons here. We shall see what will come of them once we finish our stocking. So let's get started. Okay, so we are going to work this stocking from the toe up, and you may recall that I have done a stocking in this fashion. I believe it's in Christmas of 2018. I did the Rosebud Stocking, which was very popular with you guys. I'll leave a link for that one in the description box down below as well. And that one I also started from the toe and worked our way up. So we are going to start with a cinch circle. Okay, so you just start the little loop like that. Insert your hook and pull up a loop. And this is probably the trickiest part, is kind of keeping this all organized. Once I've pulled up that loop, I like to do a chain 1, and that secures that circle. So that is our cinch circle. Some people call it the magic ring. And then make sure you get that tail just out of the way there like that, okay? We are gonna be working half double crochets for this portion. So we will yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on the hook, and you'll yarn over and pull through all 3. Now in this case, I did not count that chain 1 as anything, so it's not going to count as a stitch. This is our official first stitch. Also make sure you continue to work over your tail here, because that is what we're going to use to cinch up our circle at the end. So you are going to proceed to place 7 half double crochets into the center of this cinch circle. So again, you would yarn over, insert your hook into the center of the ring and pull up a loop. So you have 3 loops on your hook. You'll yarn over and pull through all 3. You may notice I'm keeping this nice and relaxed. If you are a tight crocheter, you may want to consider going up yet another hook size, okay? We don't want this to bunch up and get too tight. Okay, so go ahead and continue doing 1/2 double crochet until you have 7 into your ring, and I'll meet back up with you then. Okay, I've completed 7 1/2 double crochets, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tail and I'm just going to cinch my center shut. And you're just going to pull nice and snug. Don't be afraid to pull it a little tight. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to slip stitch to the top of our very first stitch to join. And if you're ever a little uncertain here because of that chain 1, just count backwards from where you are. So you never count the loop on your hook. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that's our 7th stitch. We're going to slip stitch into that. That's why you want to be careful not to stitch too tightly. Maybe a little snug there. There we go. And you will slip stitch to join. There we go. Okay. So that is the beginning of our toe. Now you may be wondering why we did 7 1/2 double crochets. It's such an odd number. And indeed, I wanted an odd number of stitches. So a lot of times when we're using 1/2 double crochets in circles, you will hear people starting with 8. And because I need an odd number of stitches to work our pattern, once we get into the foot and the ankle of our stocking, that is why we're starting with the number 7. So for round 2 of our toe, you will chain 1 again, and you're going to go right back into that same spot, and you're going to place 2 1/2 double crochet stitches. And this is why it's important not to stitch very tightly, because you're going to have to be able to get in there a few times. So there is 1, and then we go back into that same spot, and there is 2. Okay, just like that. So that's what we're going to be doing for round 2. We are going to be increasing the number of our stitches. So each stitch will get 2 1/2 double crochets. So into the very next stitch, I would yarn over and find the next stitch there. Insert my hook. Okay, 1/2 double crochet, try and keep it relaxed. And then 1 more into the same stitch. Just like that. Okay, so at the end of round 2, you should have 14 stitches. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you back here shortly. Okay, I've completed my 14 1/2 double crochets, 2 into each stitch. And now I'm going to find the top of that very first 1/2 double crochet, and I'm going to slip stitch to join. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to go into round 3. We're going to continue increasing the number of stitches. So you will chain 1. This time we're going to do something a little bit differently. We're not going to go back into this same stitch. We're going to go into the next stitch. So that chain 1 is not going to count as anything. So we're going to go into the next stitch, and we're actually going to work into the back loops only for this round. So round 3, we're working into the back loops only. So you'll yarn over and place a 1/2 double crochet into that stitch. So remember, the back loop is the loop, that V, see the V at the top? It's the loop that's furthest away from you. So this is the front loop, and that's the back loop. So that's where we're going into. So you'll yarn over. So it'll seem like it's a little bit loose here, but that'll work itself out at the end. We are going to place 1 more back into that same stitch. So this is an increase right here. Another 1/2 double crochet. And now we're going to move into the next stitch, and into the back loops, we are going to place only 1 1/2 double crochet. Okay, there's the V right there, and there's the back loop. So just help it along there, just like that, and 1 half double crochet. And that is the pattern repeat. So you place 2 stitches, then 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So we've just done an individual one. So into the next one, we're going to find the back loop, and we're going to place 2. And that is what you're going to repeat all the way around and back again into that back loop. At the end of round 3, you should have 21 stitches. And by going into the back loops, you see this very subtle little ridge coming through. And it's just to give a very subtle texture to the toe of our stocking. So go ahead and finish round 3, an increase into every second stitch, and I will meet back up with you when you're ready to move on to round 4. Okay, round 3 is just about complete. Remember that chain 1 that we said we're not going to worry about, we're going to go into the next stitch? Well, we are going to work into that stitch to make sure we have the right number of stitches. So I currently have 20 stitches, and I just finished doing an increase in this stitch here. So that means we need to do one more stitch. So we're going to ignore that chain 1, and we're going to go right into that same stitch there and half double crochet. Whoops. Gets a little tricky with all these loops. Okay, pull that through, and now what we're going to do is we're going to find the top of that first half double crochet, which is right there, and we're going to go into the full stitch, and we're going to slip stitch to join. Just like that. Okay, so we've got some texture happening there. We've got the roundedness. So we're going on to round number 4. So we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do the same technique. We're going to work into the back loops only. This time we are going to go back into that same stitch, okay? And we're going to half double crochet right into there. And into the next stitch in the back loop only, we're going to place another half double crochet. Oops. Okay. So we've got 1 and 1, and now into the next stitch, we are going to place an increase. So into the back loop only, we will place 1 half double crochet, and then back again, we'll place another half double crochet. So the repeat of stitches for round 4 is 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. Okay. At the end of round 4, you should have 28 stitches. So into the next stitch, because I've just done an increase, I'm going to go ahead and do 1, and then I have 1. And then the next one would be 2. Okay, so you know what to do. Go all the way around. At the end of round 4, you'll have 28 stitches, and I'll meet back up with you then. Okay, so I have done an increase in my very last stitch. I have 28 stitches, and now I'm going to find the top of that very first half double crochet, and I'm going to slip stitch to join my round. So we've got 4 rounds complete. You can now really see that little ribbed texture coming through. We're going to do one more round here for our toe. So you're going to chain 1, okay, and you are going to place 1 half double crochet back into that same stitch, and then you're going to place 1 more half double crochet back into that same stitch. So we are starting this round with an increase. And now what we're going to do is we are going to place 1 half double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches, and then the 4th stitch will get the increase. So now we're going to place 1, whoops, into the back loops only, of course. So we have 1, keeping it nice and relaxed, 2, 3. And now into the 4th one, we'd place our increase. So there's 1, right back into that same stitch. There is 2. Okay? The end of round 5, you should have 35 stitches. And then we'll be ready to move on to the foot of our stocking. So go ahead and finish this round and I'll meet back up with you then. Okay, so we've come to the end of round 5. I have 35 stitches. My last 3 stitches were the individual ones. And now you're going to find the top of that half double crochet stitch and you will slip stitch to join. And your toe is complete. Okay, so I have completed round 5. I now have a total of 35 stitches. And again, I have an odd number of stitches. So if you decided to stop at round 3, if you want to make a smaller stocking, then you would have had 21 stitches. So you want to try and have an odd number of stitches. And now what we're ready to do is we're ready to move on to the actual foot part of our stocking. So you've got this flat circle here, but essentially what's going to happen is it's going to be folded over and that's what's going to create the toe portion. Okay, so for those of you that would be changing colors, like I've done stockings in the past where I make the toe and the heel and the cuff a different color to accent it. And I've done last year's stocking actually was all one color as well. So this year I'm keeping the same color for more of a traditional classic look. So we are now going on to a round 6, which will be the part of the foot. So we're going to start off by chaining 1. So we're now going to work our Trinity stitch. So you'll chain 1 and then right back into that same stitch, you're going to place a single crochet. So we're going to work into the full stitch now. Okay, just like that. And you will pull through and create a single crochet stitch. From here, what's going to happen is you're going to go back into that same stitch. You'll insert your hook, pull up a loop as if you're going to do another, as if you're going to do another single crochet, but you're not going to resolve it. You are then going to go into the following stitch and pull up another loop. So you have 3 loops on your hook. And now you're going to go into the next stitch and you're going to pull up another loop as well. So you have 4 loops on your hook. So what you'll do now is you're going to yarn over and you will pull through all of those loops. And you can see that I'm keeping it fairly relaxed. Okay, it's easy for these to get a little tight and you want to be careful because you want to make sure that you can get your hook in subsequent rounds. Once you've done that, we are going to chain 1, and this is the part where you want to chain a little loosely. Okay, just like that. So you have completed your first Trinity stitch. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a Trinity stitch all the way around. So you will then work into the previously worked stitch, which is right there. So you're going to insert your hook, pull up a loop, then go into the next stitch beside it, pull up another loop, and then the last stitch next to it. So you're always going into 3 stitches. You have 4 loops on your hook. You will yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops and then chain 1 loose-ish. I don't want it to be too loose, but see how you can see the eye there of that chain? That at least will give you the ability to place your hook through there. So again, you always begin by working into the previously worked stitch. So you're going back into there, pick up 1 loop, then into the next, pick up 2 loops, and into the next, you're going to pick up 3 loops so that you have 4 in total. Yarn over and pull through all 4. I think you guys are getting the gist, yeah? And then you chain 1. So you can see how that creates a really pretty textured stitch. It's very comparable to the star stitch, except you don't have to worry about doing the next round of it. So that is it for round 6. Okay, so do that all the way around and I'll meet back up with you when we're ready to close up round 6. And once you get down to the last Trinity stitch, you'll pull through as usual, but you are not going to chain one. What you're going to do is you're just going to go right back into that same stitch and you will single crochet. Remember we single crocheted at the beginning? You're also going to single crochet at the end. So there we have a single stitch there. Okay? And then what you're going to do is, remember that first stitch we did was a single crochet. You're going to find the top of that single crochet, which is right there, and you will slip stitch to join. Now you might think that there's a stitch here, but it is not. That is where you slip stitched. That's sometimes what we call a false stitch. So you just ignore that and you go into top of your chain one. And that is where you slip stitch to join your round. And if you're ever uncertain, you know what to do. You count your stitches. So I still have 35 stitches in round 6. Look at how pretty that texture is. And that is what I'm going to continue to do for subsequent rounds. Now for round 7, I'm just going to alternate things a little bit, and that helps to bury our seam. So round 7 is an odd numbered row. So this is what you would do for odd numbered rows. You're going to chain 1, but instead of going right back into that same stitch, you're actually going to single crochet into the next stitch. So for all your even numbered rows, you would single crochet back into the same stitch. All of your odd numbered rows, you are going to single crochet into the next stitch. And that just helps kind of bury our seam a little bit. Okay, and then I'll show you what we do at the end there. So you single crochet and then you begin as usual. You go back into that same stitch, pull up one loop into the next. See, this is where we did that chain 1, and that's why you don't want to do it too tightly, because see, you got to snuggle it in there. Pull up 2, and then the third loop. So you have 4 loops, yarn over, and you know the drill now, right? And then you chain 1. See how pretty that is? So that is pretty much it. I am going to leave you to complete round 7, and I'm just going to meet up with you to show you where to place your last stitch since we skipped it at the beginning. If it also helps, place a little stitch marker where you chained 1, just to help you find it, especially if you're a little newer. Okay, so I'll meet you back here shortly. Okay, I'm coming up to the end of round 7, so I'm going to work my last Trinity stitch. I'm going in 1, 2. Now see, this is where we did not chain 1 from the previous round. Okay, and that is the false stitch. So remember we chained 1 and we didn't work back into it. We went to the next stitch. We will work into that stitch this time to pull up a loop, create the Trinity stitch. Okay. And then we will chain 1 here. And then we still need to create our last single crochet. So you are going to work it back into that same stitch there. And now you have completed round 7. If you're ever unsure, remember, just go back and count the number of stitches. And again, you want to end up with 35 stitches. So then you just make sure you go back to the top of that first single crochet, insert your hook, and slip stitch to join your round. So it just nestles your seam so that it doesn't seem so, it nestles your seam so it doesn't seem so obvious, okay? Okay, so now I'll just quickly take you through round 8, which is a repeat of round 6. So round 7, all of your odd numbered rounds, and now round 8 is going to be a repeat of your round 6, which is all of your even numbered rounds. So every time you have an even numbered round, you will chain 1 and go right back into that same stitch. So you know the drill. Single crochet first, and then you do your Trinity as you usually do. You go back into that stitch, next stitch, and next stitch. Okay, really straightforward. You can always, whoops, don't want to lose your strand there. You can always pause and go back. I'll leave timestamps in the description box down below. Okay, so all of your even number rows always start with a chain 1 and single crochet into the same stitch. The odd numbers rows will always start with a chain 1 and single crochet in the next stitch. And when you come to the end of the round, you work that stitch that you slip stitched out of. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so you're going to continue doing this now for several rounds, and you can see that you can really see it's becoming a little bit more defined. So this is going to be a nice size stocking, and you will continue to do round 6 and 7 for a total of 15 rounds. And once you've got your length, I'll meet back up with you here and we can start talking about creating the heel of our stocking. So have fun, and I'll see you back here in a bit. Okay, so I have completed a total of 10 rounds after my toe. And so my work is looking like that. I just love the texture. So now we're going to start our heel. So with our heel, we're gonna go back to our half double crochets. And again, if you're changing colors for your heel and your toe, now would be the time to change the color. Otherwise, you're gonna continue on with me. Okay, so we are going to chain 1, and right back into that stitch we slip stitched out of, we're going to place a half double crochet. So into that first one, we're going to place a half double crochet. Okay, and we are going to place a half double crochet into each of the next 16 stitches. So we're going to have 17 stitches in total. Now I am going to be working into the back loops only from here on out to create that same texture we have in our toe. So I'm going to go into the next stitch and I'm going to insert into the back loop and create a half double crochet. Pretty straightforward. Back loop only, half double crochet. Okay, and you're going to keep doing this until you have a total of 17 stitches. Okay, that is my 17th stitch. So you can see it's just creating that beautiful little ridge there. And so that is going to be the heel. So if I take where I started and where I stopped, and I actually create my fold here, that is where my heel will begin. So we're going to momentarily not work in rounds anymore. We're going to work in rows. So once you've reached your 17th stitch, what you're going to do is you're going to chain 1, and then you're going to turn your work, okay? And we are going to continue repeating this row. So that was row 1 of our heel. So row 2 is just going to be a repeat. So you're going to yarn over and you're going to go right into the very first stitch into the back loop only. And you're going to half double crochet. So you should still end up with 17 stitches for every row. So I'm going to do a total of 5 rows for my heel, okay? So you're just going to continue to do this until you've completed your 5 rows. And then once you are done that, I will meet back up with you to talk about how we're going to sew up the back end of our heel and then continue on with the ankle and the longer part of our leg. So finish off your half double crochet rows and I'll meet you back here in a little bit. Okay, so I have completed 5 rows, and so I have a beautiful, nice texture like that. So this is where you can really see the heel's gonna come out. So now it's time to sew up our heel, the back of our heel. So you can whip stitch this if you like. I'm just going to slip stitch this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna turn my stocking inside out for a moment because I want the seam to actually stay on the inside for this particular project. So you just make sure that it's nicely aligned here. Okay, so you're gonna get your edges nice and even. And then you're simply just going to slip stitch to close up the back of our heel here. So I've already got a loop on my hook, so I'm going to go into the corresponding stitch at the very end there, okay? And then I'm just going to bring my yarn through and slip stitch, just like that. Then I'm going to go into the very next stitch here, and I go into the full stitch. Now I'm going to go into the corresponding stitch, and I'm just going to slip stitch. Just nice and easy like that. And you're going to do that all the way down, whoops, until you've sealed up your heel. Okay, and I'm down to my last one here, so I'm just going to make sure that I catch that nicely. So I've got this stitch here, and then it corresponds with this stitch right here. And then I'm going to slip stitch, and I've seamed up my heel, just like that. Okay, so with the same color yarn, it just looks really great. It just disappears. So now I'm just going to snip my yarn, okay, and pull that through. And you might want to take this opportunity now to sew in that end. And then we're going to turn our stocking back right side out. Okay. And there you go. Looks like a little boot, little booty. So that is the heel that's been formed. Okay, just like that. And now we will pick back up and continue through the ankle and the leg part of the stocking. So I'm going to just go ahead and sew in this end in really quickly, and then I'll meet you back here shortly. Okay, so I've sewn in my end, and now we're ready to go. So we're going to pick our yarn back up, and you can start by placing a slip knot on your hook. I am not going to. I'm just going to pull that through. But so here is where I want to make the decision where I'm going to stop and start. So I want to make sure that my seam, see, it actually disappears quite nicely there. I'm going to start at the back of my heel here. And that way, if there's any seam, it's going to stay nicely at the back of the heel. So couple things to take in mind. Remember that when we went around, we had 35 stitches. We want to maintain that stitch count so that way the ankle and the leg portion of the stocking will stay proportionate to the foot part, okay? So when we only used 17 stitches, that means that we have 18 stitches remaining, okay? So that means when we work down the sides of this heel, we have to make sure that we make up those 17 stitches. So I have 5 rows on each side. So if we did 1 stitch into the side of each row, that's going to give me 10 stitches. But I'm still 7 stitches short from my 17 that I need here. Now keep in mind that these are half double crochet stitches, so working 1 stitch into the side of each is not going to give us quite the height that we need. So you're going to have to gauge, okay? Ultimately, you want to make sure that you can find a way to fit 17 stitches nice and evenly into and around the sides of your heel before you hit the foot. So this is where sometimes people want to maybe start in the corner, so that way they've got the full heel, or this corner here. I'm going to start at the back of the heel, and I'm going to gauge it as I go. So there's a perfect little spot waiting for me right there. I'm going to insert my hook, and then I'm going to pull my yarn through. And I'm going to chain 1. And we are now going to go back to our Trinity stitch, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the same stitch and just place a single crochet, and I'm going to try and work over that tail as I go. And now I'm going to work my first Trinity stitch. So I am going to go back into the same stitch I just stitched out of. I'm going to pull up a loop. Now I'm going to go into the next stitch, but of course we know we don't have stitches, we have the sides of stitches here. So because I've got only one side of the heel and I know I've got 17 stitches in total, when you divide 17 by 2, that gives you something like 8.5, which is an odd number. So one side will get 8, one side will get 9 stitches. Okay, so I'm just going to try to eyeball it. So I'm going to try and just do 8 stitches down this side right now. So I am just going to find the next comfortable spot. I feel like this one is it here. I'm going to pull up a loop, and then I'm going to go into the next spot that I think would work, which is right here. You're really just going to have to eyeball this heel portion here. Okay, so I've got my 4 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3, and then I'm going to chain 1. Okay, so there's my first Trinity stitch. So far I'm liking it. It's not bunching up at all. If it starts to bunch up, that means you're spacing out your quote-unquote stitches a bit too far. So again, I'm going to go into the stitch that just got worked, insert, pull up a loop. Now my next little area here, I feel like would be right around here. I'm going to just nestle it in between a few of these loops here. Okay, pull up a loop there. And then this next one is just presenting itself to me right there. Okay, keeping it relaxed as always. And now I'm going to pull through all 4, and I'm going to chain 1. Okay, then I set it down. I see, so I can see it sitting fairly uniform. If it starts to bunch in like that, they are too far apart. So I feel like I'm doing okay. So each Trinity stitch will give me a total of 2 stitches. So I know I'm aiming for 8. So I want to fit at least 4 Trinity stitches before I hit my foot, which it looks like I will. So I'm going to do that again. Insert into the stitch I just worked. Okay. And then into the next area where I think it will work, right there. And then into the next area, is that little stitch there? I think it is. And then yarn over and pull through all 4 and chain 1. So now I've got 3 Trinity stitches, and I believe I've got just enough room for my 4th. So it's definitely going to work how I like it. So again, insert, pull up 1 into the one I just worked, and then I'm going to try and find a spot right in here, just like that. And now this space here, and that's basically where we did our very first half double crochet row. So I've got our Trinity, chain 1, and there we go. So I'm just going to take that out, make sure it's sitting. Yep, pretty happy with that. It's not puckering. Now the trick is to jump over here. Okay, so I'm just going to find, again, work out of the stitch I just worked. So I'm just working this corner like it would be a row or a regular round. So I'm going to insert again. And now I have stitches to look for. So I'm just going to go right into the next stitch there. And then I'm going to go into the next stitch, which is right there. And do a Trinity stitch as usual. And chain 1. Okay, so there we go. So just kind of swooped in around the bend there. And now I'm just going to continue on. So now I have stitches to work into. So the previously worked 1, into the next is 2, and into the next is 3. Okay, then pull through and chain 1. Okay, so I'm just going to take this out so we can just have a look at it here. There we go. So it's now going around the bend nicely. This first round will probably be the most trying round because, again, we're trying to make sure that we go back to the number of stitches that we need. So I'm pretty happy with how it's sitting relaxed. It's not puckering. And now I'm going around the bend here. So keep going around now that you've got stitches to work into. And I'll meet up with you here again when we're ready to kind of do the other side of the heel, just to make sure you feel good about it. And then the rest will be really, really easy once you get into the groove of this, okay? So go ahead and finish the top part of your foot, and I'll meet you back here in a little bit. Okay, guys, so I've come around, and now I'm ready to tackle the second part of that heel. And I did verify that I had 18 stitches coming around here, so I know I'm on the right track. So I actually need to make sure that I get another 4 Trinity stitches in here. And remember that very first single crochet? Well, that's going to count as a stitch too. So that's going to give us that final stitch that we need. So coming up around the corner here, I'm going to insert right where I was into the next stitch. And now I'm working into the sides of stitches again. So I'm going to gauge, spot, make sure that it works. And that it goes around that bend nice and easy. Pull through all of those loops. Okay, chain 1. So there, we've just come around the corner. So we're going to insert into the same stitch we just worked. You know the drill. This is our Trinity stitch into, there's another space there. And I'm going to go into this one here. Just like that. Pull through all of them. Chain 1. Okay, so I've got 2 Trinity stitches happening here. And I want to fit 2 more, which looks like I will. So into that previously worked. Next stitch, and that looks like a good spot there. Pull through all and chain 1. And I've got 1 more to go, so I'm going to insert into the next space here and into, whoops, the next space there. Just like that. Okay. Okay, it looks like I've got space for 1 more, so I'm going to go right into that same stitch, into another little space there if I can find it. And then I'm just going to go right back into that very first space. Why not? So we'll pull up a loop. Okay, and now I'm not going to chain 1. I'm just going to find the top of that very first stitch, and I'm going to slip stitch to join. Okay, now here is the true test. We're going to count the number of stitches we have. So that first round coming out of creating your heel is probably the most challenging of this project, just because you want it to look and sit even. So I'm happy with the way it looks. Okay, now I just want to count the number of stitches to make sure I have 35. Now, before I do that, sometimes it happens that you will acquire more stitches because of how you're trying to get everything to sit nice and even. In this case, as long as the number is uneven, like let's say maybe you ended up with 36, then I would chain 1 at the end and just make it 37, because it's much easier to add that extra than to go back with the Trinity stitch, because it's going to leave quite a large gap. So don't be afraid. If you end up having 37 stitches, that's fine. You probably don't want to go down stitches. You'd rather have extra stitches because then your leg is going to look too skinny in comparison to your foot. So an odd number is what we're looking for. I'm still hoping to hit my 35, so let's have a look. So you always start here and work your way backwards. 35. Wow, I still have my 35 stitches. Very excited. So it all worked out nice and evenly. Now the rest is easy because you've got stitches to work into in the whole set of your rounds. So again, just make sure you like that it's sitting nice and flat and relaxed. It's not puckering. And now we're ready to rock. We're moving up into the ankle and creating the rest of our stocking here. So the rest is very, very easy. You're now just going to continue to work your rounds of Trinity stitches. So as always, you will chain 1. Now last time I worked into the same stitch, so in this round, remember how we were doing that in the foot part? I'm actually going to just go ahead into the very next stitch and do my first single crochet and then work from there. So now I have that. I can see where my next stitch is. And there's my next gap right there, and 4. Okay, so, you know, the rest is pretty easy. This little curve here eventually just will smooth itself out and you have a nice, beautiful opening. So when I come back around here, because I didn't single crochet back to where I slip stitched, I am going to place my last stitch into that stitch, okay? And as always, I recommend actually you placing a stitch marker so that you remember exactly where that first stitch went, okay? And so you're gonna continue on now. So now what you're gonna do is you're just gonna keep working in the round and do an additional 17 rounds. And I'll meet you back up here when we're ready to do the cuff and we're almost done. Okay, so I have completed 17 rounds of my leg portion of my stocking, and I'm pretty happy with it where it is sitting because we're still going to do a cuff. Now, if you wanted to, you can certainly make it a lot longer, but I think proportionally speaking to the toe and the leg that this is a good length. So let's begin by moving on to the cuff. I just love the texture this Trinity stitch gives this stocking. It's just gorgeous. Okay, so on to the cuff. You will have just slip stitched to join your round. And so now what we're going to do is we are actually going to chain 2. Okay, just nice and relaxed like that. And now we're going to work double crochet stitches. So what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over, and right back into that same stitch, we are going to place a double crochet. So that chain 2 is just going to be used to kind of nestle the two sides together. Okay, now into the next stitch, we're going to place a double crochet again. And so for this round, we are going to, this is round 1 of our cuff. We're just simply going to place 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way around, okay? So some stitches are going to be a little bit more relaxed than others because of how we worked the Trinity stitch in the previous round. Just take your time and look for where you need to place your hook, okay? Just like that. Okay, so you're getting something that looks like that. And that's what you're going to do all the way around. So go ahead and do that all the way around, and I'll meet back up with you when we are finishing up round 1. Okay, so I've just completed my last stitch, and now I'm going to find the top of that chain 2, and I'm going to slip stitch to join. Okay, So that chain 2 really helped to nestle that first stitch in there really nicely. And I still have 35 stitches in my round, which is fantastic. Sometimes you get up here and you end up with 34, you end up with 36, not the end of the world. But you can see now the difference in the texture that the double crochets create. Now, actually, I'm kind of liking it just with the double crochets, looks really good. But I am going to do a ribbing for my cuff. So we're going to continue using the double crochet stitches in the next few rounds, but we are going to be using post stitches. So you're going to chain 2, and now around the very next stitch, what you're going to do is you're going to create a front post double crochet stitch. And for those of you that have been following along all of last month's projects, we did mostly every single project had post stitches in them. So you should have gotten great practice using your post stitch. So you're going to yarn over, and instead of going into the stitch, you're going to work your way around the post. Now, as always, if you are new here, if this is the first time you're watching one of my videos, I will place a link to the video lesson I have all about identifying parts of your stitch to better help you understand what we mean when we're talking about working around the posts or the stitches, okay? So once you work around the post, you want to pull up a loop and make it fairly relaxed, so you're bringing it up. Then you yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops only, just like you would a regular double crochet, and then you yarn over and resolve your stitch, okay? So you can see it's wrapped around the post. The next stitch is going to be a back post double crochet. So it's going to be a double crochet, but instead of working in through the front, we're going to go in through the back. So you'll yarn over, go find the next post and insert your hook behind and then push it through to the back. You'll then yarn over and pull up that loop. Be careful not to bring all the other loops up with you. And then just stretch it up a little wee bit so that it sits a little relaxed, and resolve it like you would your usual double crochet stitch. Just like that. Okay, so you can see this one's in front and this one is behind. And that is what you're going to repeat all the way around this round. So this is round 2 of our cuff. And so now you're going to yarn over. We're going to go and find the next post. This time we're going to go to the front. So we're going to push it to the front, pull up a loop, pull through 2, and the next pull through 2. Okay, so now you can see a front, a back, a front. The next one is a back post. Yarn over, insert the hook from behind, pushing that post back, pull up a loop, just like that. Pull through 2 and pull through 2. Okay, and there you go. So front, back, front, back, front, back, all the way around. I'll meet you at the end of round 2 of your cuff, and then I'll just, okay, I'll meet you back here just to show you. Once you get all the way around, I'll meet up with you at the end of round 2 of your cuff to get you started on round 3. Okay, my very last stitch here is a back post stitch. And then I've got that chain 2 and then a front post stitch. So what we're going to do, oops. Okay, and then we've got that chain 2 stitch, and all you're going to do is you're going to find the top of that chain 2 now, and you're going to slip stitch to join. Okay, so because we have an odd number of stitches, we've got a back post, front post, and then that chain 2 will always be our regular stitch. Okay, so we won't worry about posting that stitch at all. And so now you can really see the ribbing is coming through really nicely. Okay, so now we're going to go on to round 3. which is basically just going to be a repeat of round 2. The difference is it's going to be a lot easier to find where to post your stitches, okay? So for every round now, you're going to chain 2 to begin. If you like the chain 3 method, you can definitely do that too. I certainly use it a lot, but in some projects, I like the chain 2 just because it sits a little bit more snugly. So my next stitch, I can see it's a front post, so I'm just going to front post around that stitch. And so that's what I mean by it's much easier to find your stitches now, or what you need to do. And now the next stitch is a back post. So I'm going to go in through the back and do a back post double crochet stitch. Pretty easy. The next one is a front post. So I just pick up that front post, really easy to identify now, and double crochet. So now you can see those post stitches will become much more elongated as you work more rounds. Okay, and that's it. So you're going to now repeat round 3 till you get to round 5. And then I'll meet back up with you here and we'll talk about creating our little hanger, and our Victorian inspired stocking will be complete. Okay, so I have finished 4 additional rounds of those front and back post stitches. So in total, I have 5 rounds, and that includes the initial round of just regular double crochets. And then I did front and back post for an additional 4. And I'm pretty happy with how that is looking. So now when I set it down, you can really see the difference in the texture there. So you've got your ribbing, you've got your beautiful Trinity stitch, you've got your heel and your toe. And I just love how this came out in the same color, but you can certainly, of course, add some contrast by changing colors in your cuff, your heel, and your toe, which I have done in the past. So we are just about there. One final touch, and I'm extra excited because look at how much yarn I have left from that whole skein. So this worked out perfectly using a double strand for one stocking. That skein just gave me enough. So we're going to do our hanging loop, and that's just simply going to be a chain. Okay, so I just slip stitched to join my round, and I'm going to chain a total of 16 chains, and that is going to give me a really great length for my loop. And there is my 16th chain. And now what I want to do, look at that, I just have just the perfect amount. So now what I want to do is I'm just going to go back to where I originally slip stitched and just insert my hook, slip stitch to join that there. Just like that. And I'm actually going to pull that right through. And then with a darning needle, I'm going to weave that end in and knot it back and forth. And there is my loop. Let me just grab my needle here. Okay, and I'm just going to feed that through. So you can see when I pulled it through, it's not perfectly secure. So I'm just now going to weave this tail in, oops, back and forth to just make it nice and secure. That's already feeling much better. Just like that. There we go. And then I'm just going to knot it. And if you have any ends left at the moment, this is the time to now go back and weave them all in. Between your heel and transitioning to the leg, you may have a tail or two lying around, just like that. Okay, and here we go, guys. We have completed our Trinity stitch stocking. Now I am going to add one little embellishment just to kind of add that little Victorian Christmas touch. If you want to leave yours nice and plain, you are pretty much done. I'm so excited about how this texture came out, but I'm going to add one more embellishment here. Okay, so I'm just gonna add a little bit of ribbon here, just as an adornment. Now, this is where if you're gonna do something like this, make sure you decide which side is gonna be your front. So my stocking is gonna hang this way. And I just grabbed a couple of strips of ribbon I had lying around. And again, you can keep it very monochromatic if you like. But I think this is where I am going to add just a little pop of color. I'm going to add a little bit of red here. So I've just got a few ribbons, and I'm going to find a spot that I like. And I'm actually just going to insert my hook to feed it through for me. Just want to be careful you don't catch any of the other loops. Just like that. Make sure it's centered. And all I'm going to do is just tie a little bow. So I'm going to knot it. Look at how sweet that looks. There we have it. And these bows always turn out a little bit off center, but that's okay. It's got that homemade look and feel, which is part of what I love about that Victorian Christmas look. And there you go, guys. Sweet little embellishment. And your stocking is complete. So we have the Trinity stitch stocking for 2021, keeping in theme with my Victorian Christmas decor this year. I hope you found it fairly straightforward. As always, if you have any questions, please do leave me a comment in the comment box down below, or you can always reach me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. And make sure to come and check out the website at crochetcrafty.com and subscribe to the monthly newsletter, because I give away a free written pattern every month. And if you're curious about finding any more of our other written patterns, you can visit me at my Etsy shop at Crochet Crafty Canada. If you are new here, I invite you to press that subscribe button and come hang out with me every Wednesday morning when I upload a brand new tutorial. Lots of Christmas tutorials coming up in the next coming weeks, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Happy crocheting as always. Take good care of yourselves, and I will see you guys in the next session. Bye-bye.